today on Ag News Daily.
We try to help as many people as we can for whatever reason makes sense. And as you mentioned, we are a volunteer-based organization, so we have over 600 volunteers that we can reach out to at any given time from 49 states, and they come willingly and gladly to serve these families when they're going through a rough patch.
Well, welcome back to the weekly edition of the Ag News Daily Show, recorded today with a live studio audience.
Just Corey. He doesn't count.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe then we can get into some weather updates for him. We also have Miles sitting in the corner. We might have to take a picture of Miles.
We might. It's also National Donut Day. Lots of things to celebrate today.
You're right. It is early June, or Delaney, is it the middle of August? Because despite what the calendar says, Mother Nature seems to be cranking up the thermostat earlier than normal this year. States such as Arizona, California, Nevada, Texas, and others are bracing for blistering inferno temperatures this week, with meteorologists predicting dangerously high, potentially record-breaking temperatures soaring well into the triple digits. According to the National Weather Service, the daily record highs are likely throughout the week, with temperatures soaring 10, 15, and even 20 degrees above the average temperature. Unfortunately, nighttime temperatures won't offer much relief for those in that area. Here in Iowa, the abundant rainfall from the preceding weeks has continued to percolate into the deeper soil. That can be important for our crop growth. That's according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. About 92% of the state's subsoil now has adequate or surplus moisture for growing crops. That is the modest increase. This is just a modest increase from what the USDA's report said last week, and is more than double the percentage of a year ago. We saw wind advisories that were in effect for much of North Dakota. They will be there again this morning, according to the National Weather Service. Winds in central and northwestern counties could be sustained at 30 miles per hour, with gusts of up to 50 miles per hour possible. Gusty winds are also expected in parts of northern Iowa, according to the agency. Storms are expected to roll into the area tomorrow, Delaney, with chances of scattered thunderstorms returning Friday night, according to the National Weather Service. A few of these storms might be strong, have some small hail, and those wind gusts like we talked about with some heavy downpours. So seems like we've had tight windows, Delaney, for getting hay wrapped up and replanting done, but that's what we've got for you today.
And some side dressing. We're starting to see farmers really get in the field and get some of that crop input work done as well, Tanner. But when we look at the weekly crop progress report, we also saw this week the first crop conditions report for the season, which we'll touch on here in just a bit. This week brought 91% of the U.S. corn and 78% of the U.S. soybeans planted, despite more rain delays in parts of the Midwest and Plains. Corn is now at 74% emerged, and we're starting to see farmers ramp up their side dressing and input applications. Tanner, as 75% of the crop is rated good to excellent, 11% higher than last year's first national crop conditions report in 2023. Soybeans are now at 55% emerged, and taking a look at wheat, 49% of U.S. winter wheat is in good to excellent condition, up 1% from a week ago, with 83% of the crop headed and 6% harvested. 94% of spring wheat is planted and 78% has emerged, faster than average on both, with 74% of that crop in good to excellent condition, 10% more than this time last year, Tanner. But looks all in all like the crops are going in the ground and they're looking pretty good.
That's right. And we know it's been a struggle agronomically this year. So here's a segment to hopefully help you out with some tips. It's time for a REDSTAR Daily Update. This is kind of a fun segment style that we're going to roll out here during the summer of 2024 to really help you guys with this growing season, because it's different than any other growing season that we've ever had. So my pleasure to have, I feel like, most of the team from REDSTAR sitting in here in the studio. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Why don't we go through a quick set of introductions here just to get the audience familiar with who you are. Brody, why don't you kick us off? We'll just kind of keep going around the table.
Yeah, my name is Brody Benton, Regional Business Manager for REDSTAR Fertilizer. Live here not too far from the studio, over just south of Ames, and covering parts of Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri for REDSTAR.
Awesome. Thanks for being here.
Ryan Molinoff from Nebraska. I own REDSTAR, me and my wife. So we're cold and wet from here to there. So
I should have started off with the boss, right? But maybe the real man in charge is Tom, the last one.
I don't think so. Tom Stanton. I work with Ryan and Brody, and I kind of manage the REDSTAR branded business, which is our specialty fertilizer part of the business. So
I love it. Thanks for coming in, and I look forward to these segments being a pivotal part of our Friday releases here for our audience. So let's start off with what's going to be different between the 24 crop compared to the 23 crop. Which one of you guys wants to jump on that first question?
you mean the fact that we've had more rain in the last 2 weeks than we had all of last year?
Yeah, that. Exactly that.
That's created, I think, a complete set of challenges, right? I mean, last year we planted the crop, hope we'd get enough rain to get it germinated, get it out of the ground, and now we're trying to figure out how do I get it to push through a 2.5-inch crust. That's right. On its way to the surface. But it's completely different this year versus last year, and from a fertilizer perspective, it's really changed everything that we're looking at. Brody and I were just talking on the way down here. Everything we planned for V4, V5, V6 corn application, you now got to sit and go, I think I need to redo it.
Right.
Just based on the conditions, And, right now we got corn, V3, V4. It's the ugly duckling stage, as everybody calls it. The seminal root system's there. It's got plenty of water. It's like, I don't have to grow. I can just sit here. I got all the water I need. At the same time, we need nitrogen. We need potassium. We need sulfur. We need boron. We need zinc to get going and growing. And it's not there, right? Or it doesn't have access to it. And until we get those nodal roots out at V6, V7, we're probably not going to get that growth. So there's some things that we need to do right now. Physiologically, we can spray some things on it that are going to jumpstart it and get it growing. And that's kind of what you and I just talked about, Brody.
Right. So, a new product of ours called SunFed. High amount of calcium, manganese, magnesium, zinc, but then has the other things from an iron boron standpoint to drive photosynthetic activity, move those sugars down to the root zone so we can accelerate that formation of sugar and root exudates. So then we have not only just fertilizer there, but the plant pushing those exudates. So we have the biological system that's engaged with the plant too, because between V6 to V14, that's when we make a high amount of our carbohydrates in the plant. And those carbohydrates, we need to conserve them, store them in the plant so they can be put into grain fill. I mean, you look at pretty much every nutrient on the uptake curves that goes into grain, there's a very high percentage that gets translocated from within the plant to that early grain fill. And so the more that we can put into our savings account now, the more that we can use either for that or be able to go through some of those stressful periods when we have a higher amount of respiration. The plant has to repair itself. So that's why this is one of the most important stages, even though we feel like, it's a small plant. I don't want to go out there and spray it because it's covering a lot of the ground. Well, this is from a hormonal structural standpoint where we can do the most.
And one of the things, too, that SunFed's going to do is it's going to increase transpiration. And right now we have all this moisture. So we actually want to respire it, and get it up through the plant and out into the air so that our roots can breathe and get more oxygen. So I think the faster we can do that, and I think, a couple of quarts of SunFed per acre right now is a really, really good option for growers to take a look at to jumpstart that crop and get it growing.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a big factor for what our listeners are dealing with. But I want to know, is there any advantages that we have to having all of this moisture early compared to some of the past crops?
So just to Tom's point around transpiration, so think back in 22, 23, we didn't have much subsoil moisture at all, especially you, Ryan, out in Nebraska. I mean, you guys had absolutely nothing. And I use this analogy where, our plant is nothing more than a straw on the ground, and it wants to pull water through it because it's going to pull nutrients through mass flow through that what's called transpiration process. Well, in wanting to drive transpiration, you also have to have moisture in the reservoir. Because if you don't have moisture in the reservoir, it doesn't matter. And it's like my kids sit in the back seat of our car with their big Slurpee drink that they've drank all of it, and then they're just sucking every last bit of it. That's what our plants were like last year. It had that gargling sound. This year, we have subsoil moisture. We can pull tons of nutrients because naturally they're cycling. With heat and moisture, things cycle. And so now is the time when we can really influence that plant from a structural standpoint, but back to that transpiration.
That's great. Well, guys, I appreciate you stepping in studio to share some segments with our listeners. This is the first one of many. I'm looking forward to the rest of our spring and summer being full of some great information. So if they want to ask you questions on yourselves, what's the best way for them to look you up?
look us up on our website, www.redstarne.com.
Thank you very much for being here.
Great. Thank you.
Well, there you have it, Delaney, the first segment to help our listeners navigate this growing season.
That's right. We'll have more Red Star updates in the weeks to come, Tanner. But taking a look at this week's top headlines, Iowa had its first reported case of highly pathogenic avian influenza in dairy cattle. The Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship says that the affected farm is located in a dairy herd in O'Brien County, which is located in the northwest corner of the state. According to USDA's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, final confirmation for that testing is pending at the National Veterinarian Services Laboratory, or the VDL Lab, in Ames, Iowa. Tanner, I caught up with Dr. Megan Niederwerder from the Swine Health Information Center this week at the World Pork Expo to talk about how this may potentially impact the hog industry as well. So, Megan, given the case of avian influenza that was reported this week in Iowa, we've talked a lot about dairy cattle, we've talked a lot about poultry. Is there an impact for the swine industry as well with this outbreak?
Yeah, certainly when avian influenza was introduced into the dairy industry, it came as a surprise. It was the first time that the dairy industry had detected high-path avian influenza in dairy cattle globally. And so when we think about the disease being introduced into a new species, we certainly want to think about how does the risk change to our hog operations in the U.S. So thinking about biosecurity protocols to prevent any wild bird access to your feed, to your water, to your barns is going to be really important to help protect our swine industry from any introduction of avian influenza.
And to date, there has not been the introduction of avian influenza into the hog industry, but that might be a concern going forward.
Correct. We have swine influenzas that circulate in our hog populations, but they are not the avian influenza that's currently impacting the dairy industry. So again, when we think about this different clinical presentation, this mastitis that's affecting the dairy industry and reduced milk yield, we want to ensure that our hogs are protected from any influenza coming from that avian population or the dairy industry.
Certainly a lot to keep in mind for producers right now. We haven't seen it in hogs yet, Tanner, but that's always something to remain vigilant and keep an eye on. So next week, our listeners can watch that full-length interview where I discuss all things foreign animal disease with Megan.
Yeah, that'll be one to look forward to, especially those that are invested in the livestock side of things. We also saw that pork exports have been a bright spot for the pork industry this year. Strong exports are coming from a number of countries and areas, including Korea, Colombia, Central America, and Australia. But the European Union's massive drop in domestic production is also giving U.S. exports a boost. According to the U.S. Meat and Export Federation data, the EU's pork production fell nearly 3 million metric tons from its peak in 2021. Steve Meyer, the chief livestock economist of Ever.Ag, who shared this during a live taping of the U.S. Farm Report at the World Pork Expo, stated, "So this is a major shift in world supply situations with the EU stepping back that far, and it opens some opportunities, especially in Asia, for us, meaning the United States, that we can take advantage of." The EU's pork production is now at the lowest level, Delaney, in nearly 25 years. That strong demand is thanks to trade agreements. When you look at consumption growth in areas of Asia, that's because the Europe's production is being down, according to him in that interview at World Pork. So lots of good information coming out of World Pork this week.
There certainly is. But Tanner, as we turn it over to this week's conversation, I had the opportunity to catch up with an awesome nonprofit organization that some of our viewers may know very well. Farm Rescue's mission aims to support family farmers and ranchers going through a crisis by bringing in volunteers to help keep that farm or ranch going. Let's turn it over to my conversation with Terry Johnston of Farm Rescue. Terry Johnston with Farm Rescue, a development officer. Terry, you've had many lives in agriculture, so I'm sure some of our viewers are very familiar with you and your background being in the ag space for quite a number of years, but you really now have this dream role working for Farm Rescue, and we're excited to learn more about your focuses as the development officer. Thanks so much for joining us on the podcast.
My pleasure, Delaney. Thanks for having me.
So Terry, for those of our listeners who may or may not be familiar with Terry Johnston, tell us a little bit about your career path that brought you to Farm Rescue.
Yeah, now that I'm here, I've told people I think everything that's happened to me in my past prepared me for this role. It's been amazing. Yeah, I'm an Iowa farm kid. Grew up on a farm down southwest Iowa, which my brother still farms there, and have an ag business degree. And as you mentioned, spent my life serving and working in a number of roles in ag business development and sales, marketing, and so forth. So I actually came to Farm Rescue through a former coworker who told me about the organization and the fact they had a role for a development officer, and I inquired, applied, and was fortunate enough to be able to join the team just over a year ago.
What a fun career path to maybe write out the rest of your career on, because Farm Rescue has such a great mission, and I'm excited to dig into that more today for our listeners. It's a common name, I feel like, maybe in the Midwest, but for those of our listeners who have not heard of Farm Rescue, give us the 10,000-foot history of who Farm Rescue is.
Yeah, so Farm Rescue has been around, was founded actually in 2005 up in North Dakota by a farm and ranch kid from North Dakota there, and always had a passion for serving agriculture, and someday wanted to figure out a way to give back to those who were going through a tough time. He, like me, was raised on the farm in the 80s, and wasn't a lot of opportunity then at that time to go back to the farm. So in 2005, he rounded up some equipment and helped a local family plant their crop. And in 2006, we got rolling with volunteers and really started it rolling. So since then, we now are in addition to North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Montana, and then Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, and Illinois. And happy to say that we're going to be over in Wisconsin this year too. So that'll be our 9th state. And since our founding, we've helped over 1,000 families. So we're very proud of that. And it is a mission, and we all love getting up and doing this every day.
So of those 1,000 families that you have helped, what are the different situations that families have been in where Farm Rescue has been alerted and notified and have found volunteers to help step in?
Yeah, great question. A lot of reasons. Health related for sure. So whether that's an illness or an injury, car accident, something like that, where someone in the family is hurt or sick, and there needs to be some attention paid to that. That's certainly a reason that we would help. Also, natural disaster. So that can be a lot of things, fires, tornadoes, flooding, drought. So we try to help as many people as we can for whatever reason makes sense. And as you mentioned, we are a volunteer-based organization. So we have over 600 volunteers that we can reach out to at any given time from 49 states. And they come willingly and gladly to serve these families when they're going through a rough patch. You know, our goal is to keep them going, make sure that they don't lose their business because they're going through a rough patch, whether it's, you know, physical or damage. Like recently, we just finished up in southwest Iowa helping with after that awful tornado went up through Corning and Greenfield here a few weeks ago. Tore up a lot of people's lives, and we were blessed to be able to go there and help some families plant. So a lot of different reasons, but our volunteers are amazing. They do the work. They give their time and talents to help us help those families.
So the people that step in and volunteer for Farm Rescue, I've been always so impressed by that, just seeing the mobilization of people willing to support where they can. Are a lot of the people that volunteer their time and resources farm families themselves, or do you get people outside of the farming community that find an interest and a passion in helping out?
Well, we certainly do have current and retired farmers for sure. Even some of those families that we've helped in the past have signed up to volunteer just to pay it back. So that is awesome. We have a lot of John Deere employees. John Deere is one of our primary sponsors on the equipment side there. So a lot of current and retired John Deere employees, but we have folks, men and women from all over the country that are willing to come in and give their time and help those families. It varies. Some will help 2 or 3 days, and we've got folks that'll come and stay a month if they need to, go all the way up to the northern North Dakota border and plant and do whatever it takes to make sure that we get the crop in or out or whatever for the family.
That's phenomenal. And I didn't realize it would take maybe multiple weeks for sometimes that cleanup effort or helpful effort would take. But I know you mentioned the tornadoes recently here in Southwest Iowa. You guys are also wrapping up an important Operation Haylift that helped with folks dealing with some extreme wildfire and drought conditions. How did the name Operation Haylift come to be, and what was that effort focused around?
Yeah, this is not our first one, actually. We've done a number of these. And as you mentioned, in this case, as everyone probably remembers, I guess it was the end of February, beginning of March, there were some massive wildfires in Nebraska, and then as well as Texas, Oklahoma. And so there's been a number of cases where we've enacted an Operation Haylift. In this case, we wanted to help those families whose feed was destroyed by those fires. And so we were asked to help with that effort. We serve Nebraska officially. We don't necessarily serve Texas and Oklahoma, but there was a need. We had volunteers willing to drive the trucks. We have the semis, and we were also blessed with a lot of people willing to donate hay. And so we just put the effort together. And so since then, we've been hauling loads of hay to Nebraska, Oklahoma, and Texas, and helped many families kind of get through till hopefully the rains have come. Their pastures coming back, and they've also rounded up other feed sources. So yeah, that's been an ongoing effort, and we're very pleased that we were able to help with that.
Now, Terry, when we have natural disasters like wildfires, tornadoes, or you get a family that has some sort of maybe medical emergency, how do you decide when to step in? Does Farm Rescue decide to step in, or do you have to get a nomination to go in and support that community or family?
Yeah, great question. So there is an application process, and so that can happen a lot of ways. One, of course, the family can go to our website and fill out an application themselves. In most cases, it's a referral. So somebody that the family knows that they're going through a tough time, they reach out to us and let us know. And then either the family contacts us or we contact them to see how we can help. And so it really kind of varies, depending on the situation. And we do rely on referrals. So just so people know, farm families often don't ask, they don't want to trouble us or, take services away from somebody else, but we have plenty of volunteers, plenty of equipment. And so if somebody has a need, just please reach out, go to our website, make a referral if necessary. And we would love to help it and it doesn't take us very long, in a case like, especially a natural disaster where bang, it happens and it's go time, right? These folks, unfortunately, their equipment was all tore up. They were just unable to plant their soybeans down there in Southwest Iowa. And so we were able to rally a team and actually drove a tractor and planter in from Nebraska, moved it over to there. Volunteers did that. And then we were able to complete planting their beans this past weekend. So just one less thing. I mean, those families obviously had 1,000 things to worry about: vehicles, equipment, buildings. In one case, the house, the hog buildings, grain bins, everything just wiped off the building site. And they're just literally starting from scratch. So they have a million things on their mind, so much to do. And of course, their neighbors were busy cleaning up their own or finishing their own. We often say, hey, well, if I get in trouble, the neighbors will help. And that's awesome. But sometimes they can't, or it's really costing them big time to have to step away from whatever they're doing. And so we are just so glad to come in and help with that effort and get the job done.
Absolutely. And I think looking at the history of Farm Rescue, I feel like there was one big moment that really put you guys on the map, and that was the campaign that you had with Busch Light and John Deere. I should have grabbed my can. We've got one sitting down on our wall of trophies in our basement, but that campaign was such a fun one and got people outside of the ag industry involved as well. How did that idea come to be?
Well, first of all, Farm Rescue can't take credit for it. That's for sure. Busch Light, actually, this is the 5th year Busch Light has done the corn can for the farmers Farm Rescue campaign. And so don't be shy. If you see the corn can, please buy it and enjoy it. That's part of the campaign fundraising effort that Anheuser-Busch does for us through Busch Light. We so appreciate that. But yeah, I happen to be a big fan of John Deere, and when I saw that case with John Deere tractor plus farm rescue on it, that was very exciting. And you're right, it did get us a lot of attention. In fact, still does. You still travel around and see the posters, a lot of beer signs, a lot of signs in shops and so forth. So we're very blessed with the dedicated ongoing sponsorship from both John Deere and Busch Light, and that just happened to be one of those, in my opinion, marriages made in heaven.
It certainly was. I just remember so many people talking about when those cans first came out, having to get their hands on them or multiple cases. But that really is part and parcel because Farm Rescue is a nonprofit organization. So you have to find ways to help support those families that have natural disasters or health instances that might require funding. Terry, of all the ways to get involved, what can you just maybe, to tie a bow on it, list all the different ways that our viewers could get involved with Farm Rescue if they're interested?
Sure. Well, first of all, go to our website and check it out. It's farmrescue.org. And there's a lot of information there about the families we've helped, about our volunteers. But there's a place there to apply, for example, if you would like to be a volunteer. So you can do that there. You can also refer a family. If you know of someone that needs assistance, you can apply for yourself. You can also donate. As you mentioned, we are a 501c3 nonprofit. So our individual donors and corporate sponsors are the ones that pay for everything. So they help us with our equipment costs, of course, feeding and housing our volunteers and fuel and all that. So, we rely heavily on that. I would say helping us spread the word, Delaney, is so important. We have a marketing team of one. So our resources are limited as to how much we can do and where we can be and the funds donated to that. So follow us on social media. Please share our stories. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. So I probably missed one, but kind of exciting. John Deere put together a really cool video a year ago when we were helping our 1,000th family with wheat harvest, and so they put that video out. So go look for that. That's really cool. It's really well done. And again, we can't thank them enough. But if you're willing to help spread our message, share our post and so forth through your social media network, and make sure that the families that know we're here. We can't help people if they don't know about us. And so that would be awesome if people could help us spread the word.
Absolutely. Terry, I saved the best question for last. You guys are almost now at your 20-year mark of the organization. What do you think year 20 and beyond brings for Farm Rescue? What kind of goals do you have your sights set on?
Well, certainly we want to serve well and serve more folks that are in our current 9-state area, but we do want to grow bigger. We do want to cover more ground, and that's going to require more sponsors and more volunteers. We are looking forward to celebrating our 20th year next year, so we're very excited about that. I would predict that our next 1,000 is going to come much quicker than the last 1,000. Obviously not because we hope more people have problems, but more people are aware, and we're able to help more folks in the coming weeks, months, years. So we're very excited about that. We have a new leader coming in, joining us here in a week or two, Nate Clark. We're very excited about that. Was formerly with the John Deere Foundation, so he's very familiar with Farm Rescue and who we are, how we do things. And so we're very excited to have Nate joining us on the team as well. So we're looking forward to that.
Well, a lot of big things ahead, Terry. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today, and appreciate your time sharing the history of Farm Rescue.
It's my pleasure, Delaney, as always, and thanks for helping us tell our story.
Well, Terry, that was a fun conversation. I know you have a conversation starter here you're wearing as well.
That's right. It is certainly. Trade Mutt is a really fun company. Go look them up, and they support mental health and agriculture as well.
Well, lots of good causes to get behind. But as we take a look at this week's holiday-shortened week, we finally saw some higher futures on Thursday. After 7 consecutive days of losses in corn and soybeans, Thursday's trading session brought double-digit rallies to cover short positions in both those two markets. Angie Setzer with Consus Ag, a.k.a. the goddess of grain on X, says the question now is if this is a change in market attitude or simply a dead cat bounce in a weaker market. Behind the soybean market rally this week, soy oil premiums in Argentina reached their highest point since July of 2022. Argentine sources cited several factors for a tighter soy oil supply outlook, especially for nearby loading months, including a slower pace of farmer sales amid the delayed soybean harvest and higher operational costs due to the lack of natural gas available right now in Latin America.
That's right. And looking ahead to next week, Delaney, the June WASDE report is due out next Wednesday. A big question surrounding the report is whether or not the USDA will adjust corn yield down from last month's 181 bushels per acre due to wet conditions, even though planting has been on pace. There are also questions looming about the expected demand from China, as they've continued to indicate that they will book sales from our Latin American counterparts. Export sales for the holiday shortened week ending May 30th were mixed, and red meat export sales were down on the holiday shortened week as well. Beef sales came in at 14,500 metric tons, an 8% decline from the prior week. Pork sales for the week were down 33% at 29,900 metric tons. Of this, nearly one-third was sent to China. Pork exports slipped 1% compared to the week prior, Delaney.
Well, lots of pork news this week, Tanner. That was pretty unintentional. It just happened to work out well with the World Pork Expo this week.
I think a lot of news sources were attending the World Pork Expo, which is probably where a lot of their news came from as well. But stick around for next week. We will have less pork and more... What else should we include? Maybe we can have some CTO updates as far as John Deere goes.
We may have some updates. We'll certainly find out.
That would be great. But thanks again for tuning in. Find us on social media. Leave your comments and feedback. And if you've got somebody we should interview, make sure you let us know. But what do you say, Delaney, for today?
Let's let them go.
Let's let them go.